Hi there, this is the fourth video associated with this step, adding backend actions in the Joomla tutorial developing an MVC component. So in this fourth video, we're going to be doing this step, displaying this editing form. So when we're looking at adding and editing records, we've done this first part, the add and the edit, sending us through to a redirect. And in this step, we're going to display the form and put on those save and cancel buttons. And then in the next video, we'll look at processing the save and the cancel buttons whenever they're pressed. Now, in terms of the URL that we have to service in this video, this is it here. This is the redirect. So it's com hello world. There's no task here, so it's going to go to the normal basic controller. The view is hello world, and that means the model will be hello world as well. And the layout is edit. So in terms of our picture, this is our input parameters. No task, just the view hello world. So it means we've got the hello world controller. That's go to admin. That's this one here. Just open that up. We've got the hello world view and we've got the hello world model. And the only thing that's different from the kind of standard MVC there is we're going to be putting in a TMPL edit file instead of the usual default.php. So on our list of things to do, well, we've got the controller there, and it's going to call its display function called, which is going to be handled in the JController legacy. So we'll really not have anything to do in this case. In our previous case, we had this here being activated because whenever we clicked just here, we wanted by default this view to appear. So we picked this as the default view, but because in this case we've got a view in our parameters, we've got a view equals hello world, it's going to take that instead of that other view. So basically we've nothing to do in that controller. In the view, we'll have to get the form to display. We'll have to get the ID because that ID is going to be used down in our layout file. And we'll need to put on those save and cancel buttons. And then in the model, now it's the model which really does the work around handling the forms. The forms are seen as kind of like data, which is under the jurisdiction of the model. So within the model, we're going to have to build the form, supply the pre-filled data. So for example, if you come in here and you want to edit this, you want to see HW6 as the pre-fill whenever you're editing. So that's what we need to put in there. And then we need to put the layout file in place, and we'll handle these things in the next video. Now, Joomla forms, we're going to be building a Joomla form basically from scratch here, and they can be a little difficult to understand. So what I've done is I've put these down, this list of steps down that we have to follow. First of all, we have to define the form in XML, and we've got that in our tutorial down the bottom somewhere. This is our form. And if you looked at the videos when we were looking at adding menu items, we saw that menu items are really just forms. You'd find the menu item in terms of an XML file, which is really just a form. So this looks fairly familiar. And these fields here You again have the standard field types. One here that we've got is a text field. So if we go down here, we can see text, and we click on that. And it tells you the sorts of things that you can have in that text field. So that's that. In our class, we have to extend JModelForm, because JModelForm is the thing that really handles the forms. We have to write our getForm function. Inside that getForm function, we'll have to call loadForm, and getForm and loadForm are both in our, this is our JModelForm. So if we do look for getForm is here. You can see it's abstract, so we have to provide a implementation of that. And loadForm is the thing that is there to really load the form from the XML file. So loadForm is going to process that XML, and it's going to produce a JForm object. And the JForm object is defined by this class here. So we'll look at that a wee bit as well. So that's the second step, putting that those functions together in our model. The third step is optionally providing pre-fill data, and there's a callback whenever we call loadForm. LoadForm then calls back to our code loadForm data to actually provide some data for that form. So whenever you have a form on the web that you're filling in, some of the data could be filled in already, and we provide the data for that form by passing a return value back from this loadForm data. Then we have to display the form using a layout file, and we use the JForm structure to get bits and pieces of that form. And then whenever somebody submits that form, we have to handle the subsequent post. So let's look at that in terms of our code. So this is about displaying the editing form. We've got our parameters in, as I said, which is going to be the standard hello world controller view and model. And in the controller, there's going to be nothing to do. And in our display function in our view, we're going to need to get the ID, because the ID of the record we're editing is going to be used in our edit file down here, in our layout file. So that's one thing we have to do. We have to display the save and cancel buttons, and then we have to get the form, and the get form is done on the model, so that'll be there. Also in our model, we'll provide that function get item, which will provide the ID back to the view, and we'll use JTable to do that. And we also have to write our load form data function. And then in our edit file, we'll have to put the HTML output for the form. Okay, so that's the plan. Let's get started then. First of all, hello world controller. As I say, we've got basically nothing to do. That'll be fine like that. Our second file then is going to be the view. We need to provide hello world view. So we're talking about in our admin, we want a view. And at the moment, we've just got hello worlds. So we want to get a new folder. And in that folder, we'll want to put our, same way here, view.html.php. And we'll also have to create a tmpl folder for our layout file. So we need the view code. So let's just pick that up from our tutorial. It's somewhere up here. Okay, so here we are. We need to get the form and get the item, and then we'll add the toolbar and then call display. So let's just copy that. We'll need to copy this whole file, don't we? A new. And we'll save this in our views world view.html.php. Okay, so that's our view. We're extending JView legacy. I don't really think this line's necessary. I think I'm going to comment that out. So we're going to get the form, and this get of form will be translated into a function get form in our model, and similarly this will get transformed into a function get item in our model. Some error checking there. I'm conscious that I haven't really looked at error checking at all, so I feel as if there's a need to look at that at some point. We need to add the toolbar, so we'll go down here and go through this function here. This line here just means that whenever we're editing these, this top menu is going to be grayed out, so that you have to kind of complete editing those before you get back to those top menu items. We're sending through ID 0 to indicate that it's an add, that it's a new record. So this is going to be set in that case. And if it's new, it's going to get 2 different titles there. And we're going to put on a save button and a cancel button. And these are just going to have different messages depending on whether it's a edit or a save. Sorry, a cancel or a close. Sorry, an add or an edit. Right, let's finish that. Okay, so that's our view. Let's go back to our list of things to do. So we just check that. We get the ID, we display those buttons, and we get the form. So this is getting the ID here. This is displaying the buttons, and this is getting the form. Okay, so we've done that. Okay. Now I will come along to our model, and we will expect this to be in our models. And we'll write hello world.php, so this is what we're going to be changing. So get item is the first thing that we need to do. And we're just going to do what we did somewhere else here. We're going to get the ID from the input. We're then going to get the tables, so it's pretty much this line here. And specify this. And it's going to be hello world. The world table. We'll just forget that. And then we're going to do a table load of the ID and return our table. So that should have the data in it. That'll have the greeting in it in the case that an ID is valid there. So that's our get item. what's the next thing we need to do? We need to get form. Right, okay, so I'm going to go to the tutorial here. Just copy this line here, this option. Okay, let's have a look at this. So this is calling load form, and as I mentioned, this is in our legacy JModel legacy here. So the parameters we're passing the name of the form, which can be really anything, but just from the point of view of avoiding any clashes, we started with com hello world, and then we can put anything there we like. We're passing the source. So this is, where is this source? Where is this form XML file going to be found? And we're going to put it in hello world. This actually might be a good time to get it. Here is our form here in XML. And we save that. And now Joomla will expect this to be in a certain position. And it will be expected to be in the admin models forms directory. And it's going to be hello world.xml. So it's the admin models forms directory. It's going to be called hello world.xml. Okay, that's that. So we've got our form. Now these two things are quite important. Control, whenever someone clicks the submit, enters the data into the form and then hits the submit button, or we're going to have it as a save button, that data is going to be sent up in a post request to the server, and the fields which are going to be associated with the hello world record are going to be indicated by this variable here. So we'll see this whenever we press the submit button and we put on our F12, our developer tools in the browser. Whenever we look at the post parameter, this is the name of the parameter which we're going to see. So I'm going to actually just change that just to hello world HW form, just so it stands out a wee bit, and we'll see that later on. And the load data then indicates, should this function load form call back to get the data filled in, to get the values filled in. So we're going to set that to true. Now, whenever we call this from the view, we're not going to pass any parameters, so the default is going to be true anyway, but I'm just putting that to true. And then it's going to return the form. So what this is going to give us back, this load form, this is going to read the XML file, our file here, and then it's going to produce in memory an object which represents that form. And that object is this JForm object here. So this JForm class defines the object, the JForm object, which is going to be built up as by this function load form when it analyzes this XML file. Okay, so much for that. Next, our list of things is our load form data. So we go back to the model and we'll just take this here. So this is what load form is going to call back to allow us to inject the data into that form. So it's when we send the data back, obviously we have to send the data back so that it can tie together names here, like ID and greeting, with the names of the data items we're sending back. And so if we use, we're going to be using get item. And get item here is going to run this function, and it's going to return what table gives us. So tables gives us, if there's a record there, you will get something like table like ID. Oops, sorry. Can't type. Or table. So these things here will be set up, and those names will have to match these names here so that it can actually tie the two things together. And then what it's going to do is, in its JForm object, it's going to put in values. So it's going to kind of stick in value equals xxx, whatever it gets back from this call here. Just now this thing here, get user state, we saw that a wee bit whenever we were looking at pagination, and saw that things kind of stayed over a number of HTTP requests, and we saw that those were state variables. And it's a similar sort of thing here, where we've got state variables that kind of stay over HTTP requests. And the reason for this is that if you're editing a form online and you put in some data and you press the submit button, that goes off to the server to get validated. And the server might find some problems with that, and it will redisplay that form, and it will show you again, kind of redisplay it with the values that you have already put in. Now, the way that Joomla seems to work with forms is that if a user comes along and enters data into a form and presses the submit button, it goes up to the Joomla server, validates the post parameters, whatever the user entered, and then it'll send back a redirect response. It won't just send back the table for re-entering. It will send back a redirect saying, do this form again. So what we're going to have to do is send another HTTP request for the form. So it's going to be a different HTTP request. So in order to provide the data for that second HTTP request, it has to store the parameters or store the data that user entered somewhere. And it does that by storing that in the session cookie. So it stores the data or information about what the user entered in that cookie. And then when it sends the redirect, it sends the session cookie down, and then in the next HTTP request, the session cookie will be sent back up, and from that it will be able to find out what the user data entered before on the form, and when it puts out the form, it will include that data. So what we've got here in our code is we have got get user state, and that is us down here basically reading this session cookie, and there will be an equivalent set user state up here, which will basically be whenever the user hits the submit key, or in our case the save key. That's where we should have an equivalent set user state. Okay, so much for that. That's our load form data. Now, what else have we got? We've done this. So it's just this layout file to do. and this is up here somewhere. Here we are. So we'll just copy this here. And we're going to save that in the layout directory for the Hello World view. And we have to call it edit HP. It's the edit layout. So what have we got here? Form action. So where is it sending it? Well, it's basically sending us back to where we came from Hello World. Layout is edit. And the ID is whatever the ID is. So this is why we needed to get the data, the get ID in the view. Needed to get this item here because we use that item to have the ID of that to know what the URL is that the form has to be sent to. Admin form again, it's the standard name. And then this is us using the form. This form is this here, which is what we've got from get form, which is in our model. Our get form is this form, which has been returned from load form. So I said, what Joomla has done, it's processed the XML file, produced this JForm object. And look on here. This is all about the JForm object. This class implements an API for constructing, populating, filtering, validating forms. It uses XML definitions to construct form fields and so on. And in our code, we have got this form get field set. So down here, that's what this is here. This is what we're calling. And it's really just providing a list of the form items, which will be to basically the ID and the greeting. And you can see it also here. That's what we're calling. Right. I think that may be about it. So let's try zipping it up and see what sort of errors were going to occur. Well, those are saved. Okay, we're going to call this 9F. And install this. Oh, that's good. So components, hello world. What errors are we going to get? Hold on, define method load form in this. And I'm just wondering. This one. So we needed to extend JModel form. That's the first error we've encountered. Have another go. Oops. Whoa, there we go, success for that. Notice these are grayed out, we can't do anything with these. These buttons won't work, obviously, doing anything, so let's go. That seems to be. Ah, indeed. So that's good. Let's just put on our tools. Okay. So here is what is being sent to the server. Okay, so this is the thing I wanted you to see here. I'll just zoom in on this. See there, JForm. So JForm, you remember, is put in model here. So this control parameter here is really giving the name of the parameter that is going to have the information that is going to be sent up to the server, and that will enable us to process these save and close buttons. Okay, so that seems to be working, and in the final video we'll look at actually handling the save and the close, or the save and the cancel. That's it. Thanks for watching.